All right, so in this video, we're going to go ahead and we're going to multiply fractions as well as divide fractions. So when we have two fractions, we'll say a over b multiplied by c over d. It doesn't matter what numbers they are as long as the denominators are not equal to 0. So we multiply these straight across, and we get ac, or a times c, over b times d. Okay, so when we're multiplying fractions, we just go ahead and multiply straight across. So if we would have 5 over 7 and we multiply it by 3 over 2, we're going to go ahead and multiply 5 times 3. And we're going to go ahead and multiply 7 times 2. Okay, so 5 times 3 is 15. 7 times 2 is 14. And we are done with this particular fraction. Okay. Now remember, when we go ahead and work with fractions, we do always have to check for simplifying. Now 15 over 14 cannot be simplified. And even before I get to the 15 over 14, if I look here, I notice I do not have a like number on the top with a like number on the bottom. So therefore, I can't simplify this fraction. I can continue with my multiplication. Right, let's go ahead and look at the next example here. So I have 8 over 7 times 2 over 4. There's a couple different ways you can look at this. All right. Now if I look at this 2 over 4, that simplifies on its own. And I can divide top and bottom by 2 and simplify that fraction outright. My 8 over 7, however, has to stay. So if I go ahead and take my 2 over 4, divide top and bottom by 2, my numerator becomes 1, my denominator becomes 2. All right, and I'm totally allowed to do that. So now I have 8 over 7 times 1/2. That means I have 8 times 1 over 7 times 2. And I also want to show you something else. As I look at this, I see my 8 and my 2 are both even. So if I want to, I could go ahead and simplify right now by dividing by 2 for top and bottom. And what I'm basically doing is dividing 2 by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so that becomes a 1. 8 divided by 2 is 4, so that becomes a 4. And when I go ahead and multiply straight across, I have 4 times 1, which is 4, and 7 times 1, which is 7. Okay, of course, this is not the only way it can be done. All right, so if I multiply this fraction still straight across, my 8 over 7 times 1/2, and I'm on 8 times 1 is 8, and 7 times 2 is 14. Okay, and I still notice here that my fractions, this fraction here, both the numerator and denominator are even. So I can go ahead and take those and divide by 2, which gives me 4 on the top and 7 on the bottom, and I get the exact same thing here and here. So it doesn't matter what method you use to simplify your fraction, you just have to make sure that your fraction is completely simplified before you go ahead and put your answer in. All right, let's look at a couple more examples. So here I have 8 over 7 times 1 over 4. Similar problem. And again, I can go ahead and notice that my 4 and my 8 are even and divisible by each other. All right, if I multiply straight across, I get 8 over 7 times 4, which is 28. And I could simplify this fraction here. I can either start with dividing by 2, or I can go ahead and divide by 4. Now I can tell from here that it's divisible by 4. But let's say I decided to divide top and bottom by 2. I didn't see 4. So when I go ahead and divide top and bottom by 2, I end up with 4. and 28 divided by 2 is 14. And again, both of these are even, so I could divide by 2 again and end up with 2 over 7, which would be my final answer. I could also go back to the original problem, and sometimes it's easier to go ahead and just write it is one fraction. You're totally allowed to do this with multiplication. And I noticed that my 8 and 4, I could divide 4 into 8. So I can go ahead and say, okay, well, 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And now when I multiply straight across, I end up with my 2 over 7. I still got to the same place. So you'll see me do a couple different ways of simplifying fractions, but all together, your goal is to make sure it's in simplest form no matter what type of method you use. Okay, I'm going to show a slightly different method for the next one. Okay, so I have 16 over 7 times 3 over 12. All right, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is say, okay, well, I know 16 is 4 times 4. And I know I'm multiplying that by 3. So that's my numerator. So my 4 times 4 gives me my 16, and my 3 is already there. I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, well, 7 is 7 times 1. I can put 7 times 1 or just put 7. It's up to you. The ones don't necessarily change anything. And I know 12 is 3 times 4. So rather than multiplying these straight across, what I want to look for is, do I have the same number in the top as the bottom? And if I do, I can cancel one of each, one on the top and one on the bottom. So I can just go ahead and cancel out these 4s. And what happens when I cancel out the 4s, they become 1s. I can write myself a note for that or not. And then if I go ahead and look at the 3, I have 1 in the top and 1 in the bottom. Those go ahead and cancel straight out and become 1s. So basically all that's left on the top is 4 times 1 times 1, which is just 4. And 7 times 1 times 1, which is 7. And I end up with 4 over 7. I could have also gone ahead and simplified this fraction. Okay, so if I went ahead and did that, I would have 16 over 7 times 3, and this I would divide top and bottom by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 12 divided by 3 is 4. This makes it a little bit smaller. I could multiply straight across if I wanted to, but then I also notice that I have a 4 and a 16. So I could divide top and bottom by 4. So I have 16 over 28, okay? Or I could write it like I did above as 4 times 4 over 7 times 4. And I have a pair of 4s that are like one on the top, one on the bottom. I can cancel them. And I still end up with 4 over 7. I could have also taken my 16 over 28 and either divided by 4 or divided by 2. It really wouldn't matter. You'll get to the same place. If I divide 16 by 2, I get 8. If I divide 28 by 2, I get 14. And then again, I would have to go ahead and divide top and bottom by 2 because there was actually a 4 that I could have done. And I end up with 4 over 7. And I'm same place here, here, and here. Okay, so I approached them a different way each time. I still ended up with the same number, which is really all your goal is. Right? Let's continue in looking at division. Okay, when I have division of fractions, I can't go ahead, first of all, do not simplify, right, at this point. Okay, first thing you got to do is something we call KCF. KCF stands for keep change, flip. Okay, and when we do this keep, change, flip, we keep the first fraction the same. We change the division to multiplication, and we flip the second fraction over. Okay, and the second fraction, that's something we also call the reciprocal. Okay, so let's go ahead and I keep my 5/9. I change my division to multiplication. You can use a dot or the multiplication sign. They're both totally okay. And what I'm going to do is I need to take this fraction and flip it over. So the 2 goes in the numerator, the 6 goes in the denominator. Once I am here, now I can simplify if possible. And again, you have a couple different methods. I could just go ahead and simplify this fraction. I could multiply straight across and cancel as necessary. It's totally up to you. In this case here, I'm just going to go ahead and simplify my fraction. So I really have 5/9 times, and dividing top and bottom of this fraction by 2, I end up with 1/3. Okay? Now if I multiply straight across, I have 5 times 1. And 9 times 3. Now, even though I have the ability to look at the bottom and say, oh, wow, look, that's 3 and that's 3, you can't cancel them because they're in the same spot in the fraction. You would have to have a 3 on the top of the fraction in order to simplify it. This one is not going to simplify any more than it is. So I need to just multiply straight across. I end up with 5/9 times 3 is 27, and I'm done. Okay, that's my answer. So you cannot cancel when you have like numbers on the same side of the division bar or your fraction bar. Okay, they have to be one on the top and one on the bottom. Let's look at a couple more, and I totally encourage you, if you want to pause the video, try them out and then watch me work through it. That's really a good way to go ahead and practice and also learn at the same time. Okay, so this one here, if I'm looking at all my numbers, I notice something. Both the 2, the 5, the 7, and the 3 are prime numbers. I also don't have doubles of any of them. This fraction will not simplify at all, right from the get-go. So this one I want to go ahead and just multiply my 2 times 7, my 5 times 3, and get 14/15, and I'm completely done with this fraction. So here there was nothing at all from the beginning, and I totally encourage you to look at the beginning. It was already multiplication. I didn't have to worry, and I could just go ahead and multiply straight across. The next fraction here is division. So always don't look at your numbers. Second you see division, do your keep, change, flip. So keep 8/7, change to multiplication, flip the second fraction. Now I can go ahead and look at things. All right, and I notice my 8 and my 6 are both even numbers, and I do have a number in common. So if I wanted to simplify now, I could. I can break it down and cancel, whatever works best for you. So I know my 8 is 2 times 8, or 2 times 4, sorry, misspoke, and then times 5. My denominator is going to be 7 times 1, or just 7, and 2 times 3. Now I can see that I have a 2 on the top and bottom that I can cancel. 7 and 3 are both prime, and they're both odd. So I can't cancel with anything on the top because 5 is also prime and not one of the 2 on the bottom. And the 4 is even. So I just go ahead and multiply straight across with this one, and I end up with 20/21. And I am done. All right, a couple more division problems here. We're going to go ahead and work through these. So again, once you see division, first thing you do is go ahead and do your keep change flip. So I have 7 over 3 times 7 over 18. Okay? You make sure that you are not canceling here when it's division, because you might be tempted to cancel out the 7s and then it's going to mess everything up. Because notice when I flipped it, my 7s are now in the exact same spot. They're both in the numerator. So you got to be really careful not to be tempted to cancel when you have that division going on. Okay, I also can see that these guys, nothing is going to simplify here. Okay, nothing else, 7 can't be made into 18. 18 is not divisible by 7, so I just go ahead, multiply straight across, and have 49 and 54, and I'm done. All right, same with the second one. Okay, try it out before I show you if you want. Just pause the video. Okay, so I keep, change, and flip. Okay, again, you may want to be careful because 11 and 33 have something in common, as do 10 and 14. In this case, you want to go ahead and leave it alone. Now we do want to look and see if anything else is in common here. So the way we can tell, if you don't see it, okay, 10 is 2 times 5. 14 is what? 7 times 2. I have 2 2s, but they're both in the numerator. If I go ahead and here, 11 is prime, so it's 11 times 1. All right. And we have 33, which is 3 times 11. Sorry, I got slightly distracted there. Okay, so these were stuck with multiplying straight across. Okay, so I have 10 times 14. Now 10 times any number just adds a 0 to it, so I have 140. And you can go ahead and do this a little quicker by taking, you should know that we have 11 times 11, which is 121. Okay, and if we take 121, multiply it by 3, we'll have our answer. So we have 363, so 363. And as ugly as this fraction is, that is totally our answer. I can't do anything else with it. It is what it is. It's always good to try to, when their numbers are bigger, to break it down so that you know that there's nothing you can simplify, so you don't get to this form here and go, oh, I don't want to tackle that. Okay. Here are some practice problems here. I do want you to go ahead and pause and work all 4 of them out on your own. And then what we'll do is we'll talk about it in a few minutes when you're done. That way you get a little bit of practice on these. So go ahead, pause your video, and I will see you after you've tried them out. All right, so the first one, I have 3 over 8 times 1 over 2. Okay, so even though 8 breaks down into 2 times 4, those numbers will both be on the same in the denominator with the 2, so I can't cancel everything. So this one I can just multiply straight across, and I end up with 3 over 16. Okay, the next one's division. So I do need to keep change flip first. So I have 16 over 3 times 7 over 8. Okay. Now 16 and 8 have something in common, and I don't have a lot of space, so I'm just going to go ahead and divide top and bottom by 8. Or you could break it down like number 1. I have 2 times 7, which is 14, and 3 times 1 with this, which is 3. Now, just because we have an improper fraction here does not mean we need to change it to a mixed number. So you do not need to change it to a mixed number. You can if you want, but it's just a little more work and you don't need to do that. It's not going to make it any simpler than it already is. Okay. If we go ahead and look at the next one, it's set up as multiplication. All right. So 21 is 3 times 7, and 10 is 2 times 5. And 5 is just 5 times 1. 7 is just 7 times 1, but I do notice here that I have a pair of 7s that can cancel. I have a pair of 5s that can cancel. 3 times 2 is 6, but on the bottom it appears that I don't have anything. But remember, we talked about these being 1s. So I end up with 6 over 1. Remember, we don't leave whole numbers over 1, so my answer in this case is just 6. Okay, now we have 9 over 7 divided by 6 over 3. I'm going to keep change flip first. So 9 over 7 times 3 over 6. Sorry, I think I said multiplication is division. Okay, now it's set up as a multiplication problem. I did my keep change flip. So this is 9 over 7, or I can think of this as in break it down, which I prefer to do. 9 is 3 times 3, and it's being multiplied by another 3. On the denominator, I have 7 times 1, or just 7, and 3 times 2. I notice that I can have 1 3 on the top cancel with the only 3 that's on the bottom, but the other 3's have to stay. So 3 times 3 is 9. 7 times 2 is 14. And I am done. So that is multiplication and division of fractions. Feel free to go ahead and do more practice. I'll see you in the next video.